Cool. Okay, Ryan here. I thought for starters, before I moved on to the topic I wanted to actually talk about in this video, I would just add an extra little bit to um, the Majeena language, saying I've made a couple of videos about that over the past few days. I thought I'd just add this little bit to that before I'll move on and leave the topic of Tall White or Majeena or Orion language and evidence for the sound of it and all that, to move on to different topics. But what I'm just going to read here is a quote from Antonio Villas-Boas, who was abducted by the Majeena in Brazil in 1957, taken on board a craft. He had this to say about their language. For what seemed an interminable period, I remained standing in that room, still gripped by the arms by two men, while those strange people watched me and talked about me. I say talked, only as a way of putting it, for in truth what I was hearing bore no resemblance whatever to human speech. It was a series of barks, slightly resembling the sounds made by a dog. This resemblance was very slight, but it is the only one I can give in an attempt to describe those sounds, which were so totally different from anything that I had ever heard till now. They were slow barks and yelps, neither very clear nor very hoarse, some longer, some shorter, at times containing several different sounds all at once, and at other times ending in a quaver. So there you go. That's what that dude, Majeena experiencer, had to say about Majeena language. So he's hearing a barking, yelping-like language, which and as I've talked about, I think in at least one other interview, the barking, yelping-like sounds seems to be some elements of that seem to be part of their natural language, as well as their natural language sounding sort of like, what has been dubbed samurai chatter by some people, and was described by Julio Fernandez in Spain, that had the experience in 1978, described by him as sounding like a mixture of German and Chinese. German for its guttural aspects, Chinese for its monosyllabic aspects, and then he decided, when he was listening to a series of languages later, that Korean maybe was the closest he could tell to it. But he said, uttering sounds that sounded like the cries of the Orient or something like that. It was translated into English from the original Spanish. But those sort of deep, resonant sort of sounds, or sort of sounds that people kind of think sound a bit like a samurai, so that's why it's called samurai chatter. Interspersed with sort of sounds that are more like and things like that sort of sound a bit like almost like a fox. The sound that when you hear foxes, sometimes people, when you hear that sound that foxes make sometimes, which is like a sort of sound. Or in Australia as well, you hear marsupials making these sounds that are like and these sort of sounds. Something sort of like that as well, sort of mixed in, is part of their natural language. But beyond that, they also have this plethora of repertoire of different codes, different linguistic codes, different languages that they can flip through, so that they can be just chirping. It sounds like chirping, but they're able to articulate everything they want just in chirping if they want to. It could just sound like barking. or yelping. But when you hear their natural language more, it has like a mixture of some sort of coughing, barking sounds with that more sort of sort of sound, which sounds like a joke version of a samurai or something. But that sound is there in the way they speak in their natural language, and then they'll flick other things in, and then you get the sound to cover huge distances. Anyway, this is all stuff I've heard myself, and this is reflected in the Sierra sounds, similar sort of sounds to that. Sounds that can be quite similar to the sounds of yelping sounds of, like, I would say, well, like foxes. I've never heard coyotes. Charles Hall talks about sounding like coyotes. This can also be an element, like we've talked about before, of them moving between whatever animals are present in a particular place as well. We have a lot of foxes right here in Victoria. Not native, but then they're a pest. But they're here. A bit like me. I'm not native either, but I'm a pest. And I'm here. So... And then coyotes perhaps have a similar sound to them, but it's sort of like that kind of sound that you hear in sometimes foxes have that almost sounds a bit like laughing, or a cross between laughing and a monkey, sort of a bit of a sort of sound. They have that kind of sound too, which is sort of like a monkey sound that I've heard before, but then I've sort of thought, is that a fox? But then I've decided it's not a fox because then it gets on our roof. Foxes can't get on roofs and sounds like heavy boots walking across our roof, making sound a bit like a fox. There's no way a fox could get on our roof, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, so there you go. There's me doing a bit of Majeena mimicry. And I said, you've got something in your teeth. No, I didn't say that. I don't know what the fuck I said. I didn't say anything. That was just gibberish, I suppose. But me having a bit of a go at emulating some sounds. Anyway, after that, that's not what I wanted to talk about. I just thought I'd get all that stuff out of the way. What I am more interested in talking about now is the diet. The little I know, and the little I can glean, and I'll present this to you of the Majeena diet, and also their views about consuming animal products. They do not consume any animal products. They don't even wear animal products. Okay, they're vegans, you'd say, basically. But what, and this ties in as well to ideas about who the Majeena will be more or less likely to respect and interact with. I know it sort of sounds like a bit of an elitist thing to say. Oh, the Majeena will be less interested in you and less tolerant of you if you eat meat and things like that. But it's true. It is true. So I can't pull any punches there. This is the way it is. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to subject you all to the soothing sounds, the sonorous experience that is me reading some Michael Sala. Hold on a sec. Now, Michael Sala, as I've said before, I have a lot of respect for this dude. He did so much good work in the early 2000s. Teasing from Charles Hall, eliciting information from Charles Hall that I haven't found in any of Charles Hall's interviews or presentations or in his books. Michael Sala did a really fucking good job of pulling information from Charles Hall that, and then writing them up in some of his exopolitical comments that otherwise eliciting information that otherwise would be ignorant about, for the most part, I would think. So just listen to this. This is Michael Sala from Exopolitical Comment number 25. Tall white extraterrestrials, technology transfer and resource extraction from Earth, and analysis of correspondence with Charles Hall. Okay. From 2004, December 16th. But I'm just going to speed along and say Um, did you ever see the tall whites eat? So this is Sala asking Hall. And what kind of food did they eat? Now, I've talked a fair bit had interactions with the Majeena myself about this and what they consider to be acceptable and all that kind of stuff with people's diets. But anyway, this is very interesting because we're hearing it from Charles Hall as well. Charles says, I never personally saw the tall whites actually eat food, although I'm quite certain that they ate food as we humans do. For example, as described in my books, I did see the tall white guard in the restaurant, the old Aladdin Casino, before it was remodeled, sitting at the table behind me, disguised as a human wearing a black formal suit and wearing sunglasses even though it was night. Not unusual for Las Vegas, Nevada at the time. Nevada. He had ordered a complete dinner with water and cola to drink. It was on the table in front of him. However, he did not appear to have eaten any of it. My friends, who are range maintenance men, told me that in the fall, they frequently saw the tall whites up in the mountains collecting grass seeds and seeds of other edible plants, apparently for the purpose of eating. In any event, I'm certain that the tall whites ate only plants and never ate any meat or any of the ordinary meat products. The food that I saw packaged and sealed in plastic bags on the Scoutcraft is their RV craft, so Tic Tac crafts, looked like thick mushroom pudding. It had obviously been prepared by the tall whites themselves, up in their living quarters, and was intended for snacks and meals to be eaten when they were out hiking, etc. The teacher, his main friend and contact amongst them, Branu, her real name is, at that time, well, I think it's her real name, at that time stated that the food was intended for the children, but that sometimes the adults ate it if they were hungry. The teacher used to make a pleasant joke about the little boy that I called the little fat astronaut. She used to laughingly say that he was the one who liked the food. So perhaps they felt that the food here on Earth wasn't as tasteful as the food they were used to back on their home planet. On a different occasion, the teacher stated pleasantly that it wouldn't be a good idea for me to eat all of the foods that they ate. She implied that 2 of their favourite foods would have adverse effects on me. It was my understanding that it might take my body as long as 2 years for one of them and 5 years for the other one to get used to them. It was my understanding that eating these foods made a person feel very high, somewhat similar to drinking various quantities of alcohol. Okay, so that's Michael Sala relating interactions with Dan Burish, I think not Dan Burish, sorry. I've got my dudes mixed up in my head. The main dudes that I acknowledge as being genuine experiences. Charles Hall, the other dude. I think it was interaction through email. But anyway, cool. Thank you, Michael Sala. How far you have fallen. Anyway, probably didn't need to add that, but just clarify my position there, where I'm not that happy with anything Michael Sala's done for a long time, but nothing he does that's shitty or crappy now could undo all this wonderful research he'd done early on. Now, this is relevant. Okay. I'll add to this, by the way, that the Majeena have expressed to me when I was originally going. So I've been vegan for plant-based because I've still worn leather and things as well, and I've got the dead kangaroo here, and leather boots and things like that I've worn over the years as well. So, but a plant-based diet. But I am planning on going completely vegan and not even wearing animal products as of today, actually. I am never wearing this again, and I'm going to throw it out, and I'm not buying any more of that kind of stuff. And it's a little bit sad because it's an old friend, but I am wearing a dead dude on my head. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute and what the Majeena think about animal husbandry and hunting and all that kind of stuff. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, they've said to me. It's in September. I'll have been plant-based, mostly plant-based for 10 years. But a couple of times I've fallen off the wagon, And there's been a couple of times where I've had chicken or I've had some cheese and things like that. Um, One time when I ate chicken, a friend came around, an old friend of mine, and we decided, I thought, stuff it, I'll have a little bit of chicken. And I think at that stage I'd been vegan for probably a couple of years already, and I just sort of, I lapsed and I thought, I'll just have some chicken. Um, I was eating it, and then later on, the Majeenas said to me, "You are a monster. Eating that kind of thing, you are a monster." And I was like, right, okay, fair enough. They don't approve of that kind of thing. Another time I fell off the wagon as well. Maybe it was even like a couple of years after that. And I had some meat hot dogs. Now, I know that it's debatable whether or not there is any real meat in hot dogs, but it is an animal product thing. There is meat reconstituted in there somehow and somewhere. Um, and after I had a real hot dog, because I think we'd run out of the vegetarian ones, had a real one. I thought, oh, fuck it, I'll just have a real one. They said to me, don't be doing that again. Very clearly, they said to me, don't do that again. Okay, anyway, so now they're completely and totally against hunting for sport, as I've mentioned before. But I'll get to more of that in a minute. I'm just going to, while I'm on Michael Sala, I'll read a little bit more from another one of his papers. This was an interview with Charles Hall. Motivations of the Tall White Extraterrestrials and their Exopolitics, December the 3rd, 2004. These are from the Exopolitics website. December 3rd, 2004. What follows is based on an interview with Charles Hall on December 2nd, 2004, blah, blah, blah. Based on him being a Nellis Air Force weather observer from 65 to 67, blah, blah, blah. Now, what I particularly wanted to read out was this, and this has bearing with some missing 411 cases as well. But instead of just hearing me going on about it, we'll hear it from another conscious Majeena experiencer, Charles Hall. I just have to find it. Where is it? I'm having trouble finding it. And it is a quote. Oh, where's the... Shit, man. Oh, this is... I think I have actually... I'm having trouble finding it there. Maybe... It is a quote I've put in my book and then commented on. But hold on a sec. It also might be something I've read before. Hold on, bear with me. Come on. That's relevant. Worth the time and effort. Okay, so Charles Hall, explained an incident back in September 1965 near the mountain at Indian Springs where the tall whites had their main hangar. I think I've read this before, but anyway. One of the cover stories for sightings of tall whites was that they were bighorn sheep in the desert. One hunter wanted to shoot one of the sheep and rented horses and went with his friend. The hunters eventually separated, and one hunter went near the hangar where the tall whites are based and took a shot at one of the kids. Okay, thinking it's a sheep, presumably. The tall whites grabbed him and handed him to the human guards, who were military personnel. The human guards shot him and gave a cover story for his accidental death. The guards found his friend and beat him up and threw him into the brig for about 6 weeks. Charles said that usually if one wasn't hurting anyone and one was just unarmed and hiking, etc., the tall whites wouldn't bother you. However, they would kill if threatened in any way. If you did nothing to alarm or hurt them, the worst they would do was scare you away. And that's Dr. Michael Sala and Charles Hall, 2004. There it was the Air Force personnel that were responsible for killing the guy. But you have to satisfy the Majeena. and you can imagine, in that kind of situation as well, the United States Air Force is particularly eager to placate any perceived misdemeanors, wrongdoings, um, potentially uh, upsetting the tall whites. And so they've killed this guy themselves. But having said that, in that, we have the seeds of what happens sometimes with some of the missing 411 cases. Some of them, like the ones, particularly the ones that are missing people going missing in national parks, state parks, and wilderness areas that were hunting with firearms, that had aggressive and malicious intent towards killing animals. Now listen to this. I can't find the original Flying Saucer Review article, but there's stuff about it in this Timothy Good book. I don't know, I'll just bring back up that so that I can see what I'm doing again, see if this is in shot. Unearthly Disclosure, Timothy Good, is a groovy book. I dig Timothy Good's books. He has no E at the end of his name. I'll have to remember that. I think I've been spelling it lately with an E on the end. Okay, so this is a little bit of a quote from the Soria abduction event of Julio Fernandez, the Spanish one, where he talks about the way they speak and everything. But there's one part here where, because he was hunting at the time and had a weapon, I'm not sure if it was a shotgun or a rifle now, I can't remember. He was armed and he had his dog with him when he went aboard, and he still had his gun, his firearm, and they took it from him. And were interested and were looking at it. Okay, so hold on a sec. Where's this? So this Timothy Good is speaking about the Soria abduction, and he's getting his information from the same original Flying Saucer reviews, but I can't find them on my computer. I think maybe they're on my old computer, and he's paraphrasing a little bit here. But I'll read his version of it, even though I think he leaves out some details that were in the original, in the Antonio Ribeiro original. Misgivings. The crew members showed interest in Julio's gun, and passing it around among themselves, asked him about its use. He explained that he used it for hunting animals. Do you hunt because you need to? They inquired. Oh no, because I enjoy it, he replied. At this, the tallest of the three made a gesture of disgust. And I recall that in the original FSR version of it, that he called him a savage, which he doesn't repeat in this because he's paraphrasing. He's not. That's the problem with paraphrasing. I try in my book to directly quote experiences as much as possible, or failing that, primary researchers and investigators, and then discuss what they're talking about. When you paraphrase, you can leave out details or not even mean to that are really important. I found that as well with Callagher Knapp, with just with one particular case where they were referencing the Colorado ranch case of from a Timothy Good book. When they're talking about the rancher in the Colorado ranch meeting beings, they said they just said in the Callagher and Knapp just reported they met these beings and they were short beings, and it's like, and people are primed to think of aliens normally in popular culture as being short, about being about 3 or 4 foot tall, like greys or little green men or whatever. So if you are reading an account and it's expressed that a person meets these thin beings with big eyes that are short, you're going to... I did originally. I thought, oh, what? So they're like 3 or 4 foot tall or whatever. Yeah. When I got my hands on the original, they were 5'6" from the original account, and I'm like, hold on a sec, that's not that short for an alien. For popular cultural view of what an alien is, it might be short if you're the person writing the book who's fucking 6 foot or whatever. Yeah, okay. So what you have is, that's the problem with paraphrasing cases, where it's a game of telephone, or Chinese whispers, as we say in Australia, where you're losing pertinent information, which you can't you can't afford to do, really. So that's why I always go back and go back. If I read about an account, I look for the original and bypass the researcher or investigator that's mentioning it, because I know that they're going to have altered it, left things out, added things of their own. No, 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 no. And then with my book, I do as what I can to cancel that out as much as possible, even though it's a very difficult thing to do. But anyway, what was I talking about? Oh, I was ranting about that. Yes. Hunting for pleasure, hunting for fun, hunting because you need to. The Majena understand if you are hunting because you have to feed your family or yourself and you have no alternative, you don't have plant products available for whatever reason, and this is a necessity, otherwise you'll die yourself. That's different. But if you're doing it for sport, that's no good, especially if you're putting Majena themselves in danger. So if you can get an idea here of the way the Majena think about hunters entering territories where they just happen to be in their own habitations at the time, with high-powered firearms, taking pot shots at shit that's running around. This is when shit gets dangerous. Okay, now, I've talked about that a lot before, blah, 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 but I just wanted to read from some other experiences to give you the vibe as well that this is the way they are. And people might think, well, they're hypocrites because they kill dogs by slashing their throats, and they kill, what's the deal with, in cases like a lot of the ranch or farm cases where they're killing cattle. Yeah, well, they if they feel threatened, they are prepared to kill things. When it comes to the dogs can sense them when they prefer not to be sensed a lot of the time. Dogs can be vicious. If they are injured by dogs, they're stuffed, because if a dog injures them badly, it takes them a long, long time to heal. They take longer to heal than we do. And I think I've read quotes about that before, where the teacher, Charles, was telling Charles Hall about dogs in particular they're concerned about. And as for the cattle, as I've explained before, these are domesticated cattle. This is an industry they disapprove of vehemently in the first place. They use them to make a point sometimes when they don't want people near their land or near their habitations, and they'll use killing cattle as a warning, demonstrations, to expel people. It's Psy war kind of thing, Now, they themselves, and this is another bit of a contradiction, but it's the case, and I get it. I do get it myself. Maybe other people have problems trying to get this in their head, how they can hold these seemingly two contradictory viewpoints at the same time. But I'll try and show you how they're not mutually exclusive positions. They hold these views on the one hand, where they disapprove of hunting animals for sport unless it's absolutely necessary. They don't eat animals themselves. They don't wear animal products. They respect life and want the natural biosphere of the earth to return to something kind of pre-human as much as possible. And for humans and humans, including them, Homo Sapiens and Homo Sapiens, to be in harmony with nature. They are much more able. They are capable of doing that. We dickheads and are struggling with it. But on the other hand, this is the sort of contradiction. They're not that interested in associating with animal life, and they don't keep pets, as far as I'm aware. And they don't have the same kind of affinity with animals that Homo sapiens people do. So we hunt them and eat them and kill them and keep them as pets and love them and hate them and all this kind of stuff. We're quite involved with animals in negative and positive ways. They're aloof and removed from interactions with animals as much as possible, but they want them to exist, and they want them to be healthy, and they want them to be safe, but they don't want to have anything to do with them. Or they are confused by them. They're so used to being able to control and manipulate animals through telepath technology and things like that, that they don't have the kinds of skills and culture, and perhaps even not the cerebral capability anymore. I'm not quite sure. Their brains are different to ours now. Of having affinities for animals and being able to understand them and train them and live with them and treat them as sort of subhumans and stuff like that, like we do. They're like, don't understand why you guys live with your animals, and then you're fucking weird because not only do you live with them, but some of them you kill and you eat, and you dudes just weird us out. That's the general vibe that they give. Um, so they would stop uh, animal husbandry, animal agriculture, meat eating, animal eating of animal products, and all that kind of stuff. And as I've said before, humans are much healthier without ingesting that kind of crap anyway. So we're not built to have too much of that stuff, and we can survive very, very well. Like in the past, people say, "Oh, people ate heaps of meat in the past." They didn't eat heaps of meat in the past. That's a bit of a myth. You look that shit up. Um, Animals are hard to catch. Most of the time, this is a major simplification, but I'll just quickly say this, and people can look it up and research it themselves. But hunters and trappers often don't catch anything. They come back, and the people that have been picking berries and digging yams and all that kind of stuff, that's usually the food. That's the main staple. And every once in a while, there'll be a protein hit because someone catches a goanna, or someone spears a kangaroo, or someone forces a mammoth off a cliff, or whatever. But that, for the most part, people haven't been eating huge amounts of animal products. And if you really wanted to be on what would you call it, like a paleo diet, you'd have little to no animal products. People think paleo equals like the Flintstones, fucking brontosaurus steaks and ribs and all that kind of stuff. No, anyway. And then we have access to alternatives these days anyway that are much better for our bodies. Plant-based. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so where was I going with all this? I'm sure that I might actually, because I'm getting a bit carried away, I might actually powder my nose again and rewatch a little bit of what I was talking about to get back in my head whether I'm wandering off point. Yeah, that's what I was talking about, wasn't I? It seems to be a contradiction there with that they are aloof and removed from animal life in one sense. They can appreciate it and see it out there, and a full, complex, complete biosphere is what they seek. Having said that, they don't need to be hanging out with the animals cheek to jowl. Not something that comes natural to them to be doing that, which to us sounds like a contradiction. But and also that they, like I was saying before, that they kill animals sometimes themselves. Yes, they do. But they think sometimes the mean justifies the end. And they're very disapproving of us breeding animals. They see it like you're breeding people. So, like, how, let's say, domesticated cattle today have come from the Orlocks, the old bovines, wild bovines, these big, impressive, powerful beasts that don't exist anymore. I think the last one died in some forest in Poland, like in the 1800s or something, or earlier than that, maybe. I can't remember now. These dudes, these noble, powerful, free, wild animals have been bred for particular traits and characteristics over so long now that they're the varieties of domesticated cattle that are left over. I think people are trying to rebreed Orlocks and shit like these days, but anyway. So that would be like taking humans to the way the Majeenas see it because their travel circle's so much bigger than ours, than most of people, most Homo sapiens. They see doing that would be like taking a group of humans and deciding that you're going to domesticate them and breed them so to be eaten, and also to get breast milk from them, and breed some humans just with the ones that are, you want certain forms and features, and you want certain, you know, them to produce more milk if they're milch humans, and then you've got other ones that are for the eating, and so you breed them so that they end up, with chunky, um, tasty bits, and you're breeding these humans down through centuries, and then you're keeping them in pens and things in your yards and in farms and stuff like that, and you think that it's okay some fucking how, and also you rip bits off them and make hats out of them or whatever, like the Majeena just make shoes out of them, make jackets out of the wandering around. Oh yes, this is, you see my latest human jacket. Well, oh, it's okay because we've bred these people for this. That's what they're for. Their life would mean nothing unless they were eaten and milked and slaughtered. So it's okay. And that's how. So most reasonable people, I think, would think that wouldn't be okay. Well, the Majina don't see a difference. So we have industries built on all of this crap. It's just completely destroying the environment as well. If you move away from all the ethical stuff of that, we're killing other kinds of people in a sense, and breeding them and all that kind of stuff for their meat. It's also wiping out the Amazon, and people converting massive chunks of the earth into farmland to feed all of this desperation for meat. Farms as well that grow crops to feed the animals that are being kept on the farmlands to be eaten, and all this kind of stuff. I think it's hilarious when people talk about, oh, soy products take up a lot of farmland space and it's all about the soy and you shouldn't eat soy. Then it's like, no, but most of that's been grown, most of those soy products that have been grown to feed livestock in the first place. Anyway, there it is. So basically, if a person's interested in making contact with the Majina or being appealing to the Majina in some way, not eating meat, not eating animal products at all is a really good place to start. And like I've said, when I was eating chicken, they weren't happy about it. When I was eating hot dog, they weren't happy about it. There's been several occasions where they've actually said to me outright, explicitly, vegetarianism is best. Don't stop being a vegetarian, blah, blah, blah. And veganism's even better again, of course, because milk and eggs and all that kind of stuff are really bad for you as well. Eggs are just fucking terrible for you. You don't eat eggs. You get all different kinds of things wrong with you. What was I going to say? Yeah, I've spilled away. I think I probably had other things I wanted to say, but that'll do. And Slanark, I've